initial interview with him, in which Colonel accompanied me. Jesse runs a mail route for his employer, 10 Roads Express. And from the end of September through October 21st, when this incident occurred, it was pretty routine. The post office likes routine. I mean, that's efficient. People show up at a certain time, they arrive, they dock, they unload, they load, they get to the next station at a specific time. And the post office keeps track of this all of the time. Jesse, I'll ask him to describe, because I might not describe it fully or correctly, but when he backs up to a dock, for example, for his trailer to be unloaded, well, let me back up. As he first pulls into some postal facilities, he shows his identity. It's a badge. And he receives a slip wherever he goes that identifies who he is and basically indicates what's on that truck, what's part of the load, that he's been there. He backs up to the dock, and an expediter will come out, and they will use a scanner, and they scan. I'm going to forget all the things they scan. There's a dock scan, right? There's a dock scan, and he's going to do this much better than I am. I'm sorry, buddy. And then they also are going to scan a metal seal that is put on the back of that trailer that can't be opened unless you tear the seal. So they know nobody has been in to steal from that load or alter that load. It has a barcode on it. They will scan that. And then each of the pallets sometimes has data that they scan. So they're keeping track of all of this. Moreover, Jesse's driving a truck that has GPS that he can only drive when he signs in on an electronic board that keeps track of wherever he goes. There's also identification on the trailer so that they can specifically identify the trailer. Now, Jesse, during this time, by the way, that he's running this route we're going to be speaking about is using the same trailer. You love that trailer, right? It was a good trailer. It was a good trailer. It had suspension, right? He describes it better than I, but it kept good traction on the road. You can handle in water. It had some kind of lift on it. I don't understand. I have trouble changing the oil. I'm sorry, Jesse. I'm bad at this. He loved that trailer. It worked for him. He'd driven other trailers, and they were worse trailers than that one. So he had trailer 10R1440 all the time on that route. Now, Jesse would roll out of bed. He'd go and pick up his tractor, which was parked in the Auto One parking lot, which is a car dealership there in Lancaster. He'd do all of his checks. He'd get in his truck. He'd sign in, and then he'd roll over to the Lancaster post office, where he'd back up to pretty much the same dock, maybe another dock, and they would load him up. Or did they already have you loaded? They loaded you? Already loaded or in process. He'd hook up his tractor. They'd get done with it. He'd check his load, because one time he didn't, and it shifted, and he jackknifed on the road. It was a scary, scary event. And so he always checked his load. He'd walk in there, make sure it's balanced. They'd shut it, they'd slap on the seal, they'd do all their scanning, and Jesse's on the road from Lancaster, Pennsylvania to Bethpage, New York. And he loved driving into New York, especially that time of day, early morning hours. He'd leave, he'd roll out about 1 a.m., you'd get up to Bethpage 4 or so, 4:15, 4:20, beautiful, seeing the city without all the traffic. He'd pull into Bethpage, back up to the same dock. The expediters are there. They'd have some small chat, but really weren't friends. Jesse stayed on his job. He was polite. Jesse, not political. He'll tell you, he didn't vote for either one. Doesn't follow the news much. So he's up there, and they're loading up these ballots. He didn't even notice this time on October 21st. He didn't notice at first that it was ballots, didn't think much of it. And he'll tell you about that, and then I'll come back to that. But his route's always the same. Then he gets loaded up, and he comes back to Harrisburg. Now, I want to explain something to you. Where's that? And you guys will understand this. This is not his truck. But generally, he's hauling from Bethpage what will go to Lancaster and Harrisburg. But his route takes him to Harrisburg first, which means you have to load Lancaster up there in the back of the trailer, the nose of the trailer. Yeah. They would load Lancaster first and then Harrisburg. So when he arrived in Harrisburg, Harrisburg could be taken off and the Lancaster load was there. And then he would drive to Lancaster. You can imagine the confusion and the delay that would be caused if Jesse decided he wasn't going to Harrisburg first, but he went to Lancaster. Then they would have to take off the Harrisburg load, then get the Lancaster load. They have all the loading and the logistics and the systems to run efficiently. So his typical day is that he goes down from Bethpage to Harrisburg, he unloads, pulls up to the dock, they unload, and then he's off to Lancaster, he unloads, he unhooks his trailer, he leaves his trailer there, he's going to pick it up the next day, drives back to Auto One, and then gets back home. Same way every time till October 21st. Now I want to share with you the first time I met Jesse. I went up to his home. I'd heard about his story, and Colonel Schaefer was with me. And I did what might be considered a forensic interview. It's conducted in such a way to assess the veracity of the person that you're speaking with. And generally what you do is you begin with questions that set the scene in which the witness has confidence, so that they gain their confidence. You let them know they're in control, they can stop the conversation anytime that they want, they can kick me out of the house. We had a video camera, he could stop the video. He could refuse to answer any question, he could ask me any question that he wanted. So I had Jesse set the scene. During the scene setting, he mentioned something to me. It was an offhand comment. He was telling me about his jobs, and he said, and there was a time there that I had some difficulty. And then he went on setting the scene. I knew what he was referring to, but he did not know what I knew. Jesse did not know what I knew about his background. So I let him continue setting the scene, and then I had him describe what happened. And all of it, by the way, is credible and matches up with the tangible evidence, how the post office works, and so forth. And so, as he was going through, and when he was getting done with telling me what happened, I said, Jesse, why don't you tell me about that little difficulty that you had? And he said, what do you mean? I said, about your past. He said, what do you want to know? I said, the truth. And Jesse revealed to me that he had been a drug addict, that he'd been arrested, that he served some time, that for a while in his life he wanted to do things his way, that he violated probation, that he went back up, and that when he saw his first daughter born, he decided to turn around his life. And he's been sober since then. I said, you know this is going to come down on your head. If you step forward, this is going to come down on your head. There will be people who aren't concerned about what you saw. They will be more concerned about trying to destroy you because they don't like what you saw. And I asked him if he had told his 3 daughters that their father had been in prison. And he said he hadn't. They didn't know. Now they will. Now they will. This man is telling the truth. You can confirm the truth. We have a responsibility to get to the answers of the questions raised by what he saw. And if this nation continues in destroying individuals rather than listening to what they have to say, I don't know if we can make ourselves out of this wilderness that we've created. I truly ask you to listen to what this man says, because he is a truth teller. Jesse?
Thanks, Phil. Tell you what, first time I met him, I was like, this dude's pretty cool. And then afterwards, I was like, this dude's an asshole. I want to tell you how I see it, and I'm a pretty straight shooter, all right? I'm sorry if I swore. I don't know if I'm allowed to or not, but I'm a truck driver, so be prepared, all right? They got me reading papers, and I don't like reading, I'll be honest with you, okay? I didn't want to come. I tell you what, I have everything to lose and nothing to gain from this, all right? Everything to lose, nothing to gain. And I'm already losing. Okay? So for me to come here, it was a big step. And for me to come here, it was just more so I had to put myself to the side and I have to worry about everyone else. Because I believe everyone else in America should know, all right? Just a little pass. He kind of gave you a little rundown. Yeah, I served some time, had some charges. You guys want to run with it, you can run with it. But this is what the real story is. The story is what we're here for today, all right? I didn't want this put on me, but for some reason, it's on me, and here I am, all right? I drive tractor trailer for U.S. Postal Service, subcontractor. I drive a route transporting mail from Lancaster, Pennsylvania to Bethpage, New York, to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and back to Lancaster. On October 21st, when I arrived for my usual route in Bethpage, New York, an expediter made 3 references to ballots that were to be loaded into my trailer, including saying, hey, you've got a ballot today, or you have ballots today, and even showing me a piece of registered mail and saying someone really wanted their ballot to count. In total, I saw 24 gaylords. Where's that box? Right here. You got this guy right here. That's kind of a good representation of a gaylord, all right? They're not usually put together with duct tape, though. Here you go. This is pretty good too, but for a visual, I mean, that will work, all right? So, in total, I saw 24 gaylords, or large cardboard containers of ballots loaded into my trailer. These gaylords contain plastic trays, I call them totes, but trays will work, of ballots stacked on top of each other. All the envelopes were the same size. I could see the envelopes had handwritten addresses, return addresses, and I could even tell that one was marked registered mail. That one was off to the side, all right? They were complete ballots. I didn't think much of it at the time. At Bethpage, I was first loaded with 2 tall gaylords. So picture that thing there, or this little representation here, but this tall, all right? So I was loaded with 2 tall gaylords, okay? And that were, hold on, where was I at? That had mixed mail pieces bound for Lancaster. These gaylords were loaded first because they would be the last off my trailer. The remainder of the truck was loaded with complete ballots bounded for Harrisburg. I then drove to Harrisburg with the ballots. Usually I offload in one of the 7 docks every day, but not on October 21st. I wasn't allowed to offload. That's different. Whenever I pull into Harrisburg, I go around and I get unloaded, and then I roll out. Not that day, all right? Not that day. Instead, I was made to wait for roughly 6 hours in the yard, from 9:15 a.m. to 3 p.m. This really ticked me off, all right? Because my brother was in town. He just moved back up, and I wanted to spend some time with him. I try to get the attention of postal workers, but no one would tell me what's going on. All of this was weird. I arrived at about the same time every day. The expediter scans all my seals and barcodes, and they unload me. But for the first time, but from the time I first arrived in Harrisburg from Bethpage, everything got weird. None of that happened. After waiting 6 hours, I went inside to figure out what's going on. I was told to wait for the transportation supervisor. This was also weird. 16 months I've been doing this. I haven't ever talked to the transportation supervisor for United States Postal Service. I talk to an expediter. I come in, I see an expediter, that's who I deal with. If I have an issue, it's the expediter. I don't deal with anyone else but the expediter. I never talk to the United States Postal Service's transportation supervisor. Let's make that clear. I have my own transportation supervisor for the company that I work for. He's the one that gives me the details. He's the one that I listen to. I don't listen to this guy. He's the guy that would contact my boss if he needed something ran different. I've never spoken with this transportation supervisor from the United States Postal Service. They don't speak to people like me. He's a top guy. He's the kind of guy that would speak to my boss, not a trucker like me. The supervisor told me to drive to Lancaster without being unloaded in Harrisburg. This made no sense to me. I knew the ballots were loaded for Harrisburg, and that if I was to go to Lancaster, they would have to off-unload my those pallets in Lancaster to take off Lancaster stuff, to put the ballots back on the trailer, to send it back to Harrisburg. Doesn't make no sense. This was a real screw up in my thinking. I wanted my ticket. So whenever I go to a place, when I go there and whenever I'll leave, I'll get a ticket. I'll get a ticket, a slip, whatever you want to call it. It's the date, time that I'm supposed to be there. It'll have my trailer number on it. It'll have how much I'm loaded. It'll have the seal number. It has my name. It'll have who was the expediter. So I wanted my ticket, my slip. I call them tickets. Some people call them slips, okay? And then because I was there for 6 hours, I wanted my late slip too, because I wanted to be paid for sitting in that yard for 6 hours. So I wanted the ticket and the late slip for stopping in at Harrisburg. Also, I wanted it because if they tell me to take this load to Lancaster, I don't want to pull up the Lancaster of Harrisburg crap and be like, yeah, they just told me to come here and not have no ticket, because they don't look like I just came straight here, you know? Just to prove that I was there. And so others would know I wasn't the person that screwed this up. A ticket is always provided to a driver when they arrive at a United States Postal Service facility that proves you were there. The transportation supervisor refused to give me a ticket and told me to leave. I then demanded he give me a late slip, since I wanted to get paid for the time I was sitting there and waiting for them to offload me. He refused to give me that too. He was kind of rude and wouldn't explain anything to me. He just told me to go to Lancaster. I then drove to Lancaster, unhooked my trailer in its normal place, and then drove my truck to where I always park it in a nearby lot, and then I went home. The next day, it just got weirder. As I arrived at Lancaster's United States Postal Service facility with my tractor, I went to hook up to my trailer, and my trailer was gone. Not there no more. 10R 1440. Since I started driving that Bethpage route, I've always had trailer 10R 1440. I like that trailer. It was a nice trailer. I know you guys probably don't really know nothing about truck driving or trailers or anything, but the rear tandems had if you're driving light, the rear tandems will actually, the front axle will actually go up. Nice air ride. The doors on it it worked great. Some of the trailers that place has, you could honestly put it on the back of a carrier and drop it off in the middle of the ocean and no one would worry about it. So that trailer I really liked, okay? What happened on October 21st was a series of unusual events that cannot be a coincidence. I know I saw ballots with return addresses filled out, thousands of them, thousands. Loaded onto my trailer in New York and headed for Pennsylvania. At first, I didn't think it was a big deal. In fact, I thought it was really awesome. I really did. I was like, sweet, I'm doing something for the presidential race. You know, this is cool. But as things became weirder, I got to thinking and wondered why I was driving complete ballots from New York to Pennsylvania. I didn't know why, so I decided to speak up. And that's what I'm doing today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Colonel Schaefer is going to demonstrate how we made an estimate of the number of ballots from Jesse, but from others, that this happened multiple times from that particular facility. Colonel?
Attorney General Klein, thank you for the honor of leading this investigative team, and as we speak, we have members of our team in the field continuing operations. Jesse has been put through the ringer. We have been intaking a lot of whistleblowers. They are brave people who seek nothing but to provide you the truth, and that's what we're all seeking here. So again, I'm grateful to Attorney General Klein for the benefit and privilege of doing this, and I think that's what we're all trying to do here today, is get to the truth. I'm going to outline some of the issues which makes Jesse's story so peculiar and so troubling regarding what we now know to be fact. Jesse's one of those unsung, invisible heroes who works in the dead of the night that makes our lives better. As he said, he has nothing to gain here, but everything to lose. And that's why it's important that we listen to him. So the first question we should all ask is, where's Jesse's trailer? Where is it? Where'd it go? What was the route it took after it left? I think it's a reasonable question, one that I think any reasonable American who's curious about 24 pallets of ballots, where they went. So we have a number of teams supporting the Armistead effort. One of them is my own London Center intelligence team. They did the estimate of ballots. So just so you all understand what we're talking about, depending on the density, depending on the trays, and again, this leads back to Greg's story, seeing these ballots showing up in the counting rooms in the middle of the night. That's the pointy end of the spear. We trace it back through all the different machinations to Jesse, to his mass transportation of these things. And I can tell you, other investigations that are now ongoing with our field elements are developing the next set of leads. It doesn't stop at Bethpage. It only begins there. And as Phil said, all investigations start with questions. We have additional questions we're now going to answer. But to the point of this, 24 Gaylords full of these things, not mailed like they normally would be. And let me make this very clear. The Bethpage Center is not a place where you can frank or process mail. It's a bulk mail center. As a matter of fact, it's called a process and distribution center. That means big bulk.
Material at the time, what you saw is that the FBI or law enforcement, his local law enforcement, went over to his home afterwards to question him back in 1974. And they opened up the trunk of his car, and in it they found some things. They found a butcher knife. Well, he explained that his wife needed new cutlery, and he went shopping for it. They found twine that you could use to bind a person, and he said, well, you know, sometimes you need twine. I keep it in the trunk for convenience. Okay. They found a canvas bag. That canvas bag was big enough in which you could put a body in, and it was a canvas bag that those janitors wheel around at the high school that they put the trash bags in. And he said, well, my trash bags are kind of weak. I just wanted to have it. Okay. They found hydrochloric acid. He said, well, you know, I'm doing an experiment. I want to clean my driveway, and his driveway was gravel. And then he said, we found this chloroform, 18 drops of which could kill a person, less than that would incapacitate a person, especially a 13-year-old girl. And he said, well, I wanted to get high with it. And then there was a pillow, which he said was his niece's, and there was a blonde hair, and the victim was blonde. He's serving life in prison. He had an explanation for each piece of that evidence. But when you add up all of his independent causes of that evidence, the odds that this janitor would coincidentally have left the pillow of his niece in his car the day he bought cutlery for his wife when he was going to do an experiment on his driveway and get high and had a canvas bag for trash is unbelievable. There was one causal agent to all of that activity. He kidnapped, raped, and murdered a 13-year-old girl. Now, I say that about the power of what's called circumstantial evidence. Crimes do not occur with people watching. In fact, most people don't want to be watched when they commit a crime. And so we have to piece together circumstantial evidence. In this room, there's all kinds of DNA. I'm losing it by the minute with my hair shedding. But if you found my DNA in this room, you would know nothing about whether I was involved with a murder that occurred tonight unless you understand the circumstances. I don't like Hollywood for this, and we always warn juries about this. There are no devices that solve crimes. I can't take a device, hand it up to